My name's Jim O'Hara. I lead the cloud and infrastructure practice for Red Hat and ANZ. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about my experience with customers as they embark on the journey to cloud, some of the challenges they face, some of the ways in which they solve those challenges. And I'll apologize in advance. There is no translation service for this afternoon's talk. So, and please don't try using Google Translate because it doesn't work on Scottish. So just please embrace your inner Scotsman, and I will attempt to go not too fast. So, let's get the buzzwords out of the way, shall we? Digital transformation. Everybody's talking about it. Every single slide has to have it somewhere. And you've heard about it today, even with Destinasia and Frank Flymore. By the way, I'll just tell you a funny story about Frank Flymore. When they did that session somewhere in APAC, it somehow got missed that it wasn't a real company. And somebody asked for Frank Flymore's business card afterwards and was very disappointed to find out he worked for Red Hat. So what are we seeing as companies embark on this digital transformation journey? We're seeing that it's affecting different parts of the IT community in different ways. Obviously, in the development community, it's all about the need for speed and driving agility, and so we're seeing new application architectures like microservices and new development tooling and approaches to deployment of applications. As a result of that need for speed, we're also seeing changes in infrastructure model, particularly adoption of cloud type infrastructure delivery platforms. But, and I know it's after lunch and everybody's ready to have a quick snooze and nana nap, but can I just see a show of hands? How many people here would regard themselves as part of operations? Sysadmins, DBAs, anybody who actually keeps the lights on in the business? Wow, that's like 90% of the audience. Great. So I'm here to tell you that you are the chosen ones. You are the people who are responsible for ensuring that digital transformation is successful. And this is based on the experience that we see in customers. And why do we think that? These guys in development are all about speed, right? Operations is all about service quality. And if you cannot blend those two things together, you will not be successful in digital transformation. So operations, bringing that service quality view, bringing views of things like uptime, security, availability, data integrity, those are absolutely critical capabilities as businesses drive a digital transformation. So ops is the critical component of making that successful. That said, if ops cannot change, if they cannot change the way in which they provide service to their consumers, then the risk is extinction. Yeah, that was my thought too. What needs to change? How do operations successfully transform themselves into the key component of a digital transformation inside a business? We think there are two main areas that operations need to transform. First one is mindset. And there's a lot of words on this slide. There are really two or three key areas for me, I think, that really get to the heart of success. First one is automation. Large-scale automation, automate all the things. It's really absolutely critical for operations to be able to deliver in this digital transformation world. We need to move from reactive, alert-based monitoring to more proactive, predictive analytics. And we need to be telling our customers when problems are about to occur and fixing them before they happen. And we need to move to a model I like to call, and I apologize for stealing this from Grace Hopper, but it's forgiveness, not permission. We need to give our consumers, our developers, our lines of business access to the environments in a much more collaborative and open and trusted way. So we think there's a mindset shift required for successful digital transformation. There's also a tool set capability that needs to change, and I don't think, given that there's 90% of the audience are in operations, I don't think I'd get too much argument about this. The tools that we use today are not equipped for future cloud journey. Right? They're certainly not capable of delivering the kind of service quality across multiple cloud footprints that we need to be successful. So why do I think that's the case, and why do we experience this in customers? If you look at an environment from the last, from 1 to 5 years, this is a pretty common kind of look of an enterprise IT environment. Very well understood and fairly static application portfolio, and that's the little dots in the middle here, and a reasonably well understood and fairly static deployment footprint, lots of virtualization, in fact, a huge amount of virtualization in ANZ, and still some legacy bare metal. So in this model, central IT was, and still is to a certain extent, acting as the gateway to those applications and services. When the lines of business or the developers in those lines of business want access to those things, they have to come via central IT. You're the broker. However, that model really doesn't exist anymore, particularly when you start to move along that journey to cloud. The first thing that happens is that the application estate becomes much more complex, much more diverse. I like to call this my little rainbow nation of applications in the middle. But not only do those applications come in new flavors and shapes and varieties and sizes now, and lots more of them, we now have even more deployment footprints to deal with. So we've moved from server virtualization and bare metal to private cloud, public cloud, SaaS, all sorts of different deployment models. And on top of that, central IT's role as the gateway or broker to those services is being eroded. The lines of business are now going direct, particularly in the case of public cloud, direct and consuming those services without any control or input from central IT. That's super dangerous. You remember all that stuff I talked about with service quality? Things like security, data integrity. The fact that they're not now having our capability within operations to make sure that those things are preserved is extremely risky. And not only do you have to deal with all this complexity, you've still got to manage server virtualization and bare metal as well. So pretty tough job we've got in ops, I'd say. And what we in Red Hat want to do is to give you a management portfolio that allows you to span control across all of these deployment footprints, all of these different varieties and flavors and rainbow nation of applications, and do so in a way that allows you to regain your control and role as the gateway or broker to these environments. Because if we can't do that for you and with you, then, as I said before, the risk is extinction. So what I'd like to talk about now is what we're seeing as customers move through various phases of adoption of cloud as part of a digital transformation. And this is really just a maturity model diagram here representing the phases as we go through adoption. And what's kind of interesting about that diagram is it starts to go up exponentially. So the more you do, the more successful you get, the more it scales, and the more complicated it becomes. We get to be victims of our own success in that regard. And I'd like to really just explain some of these phases and use a bit of an analogy to explain that. And the analogy I'm going to use is the Industrial Revolution. Don't worry, it's not going to get too deep here. It's not philosophy class. And really in the first stage of the Industrial Revolution, really what we had were artisans who used custom tools to create handcrafted, bespoke products of very high quality. And when you're in the initial phase of cloud adoption, we think it's very similar. Right? So the lines of business, all your consumers come to you and say, we want to deploy all this stuff all over the place, right? So what you end up doing in operations is having to consume bespoke tools across that footprint, across Azure, Amazon, Google, OpenStack, OpenShift, whatever, right? You, in this phase, are the artisan. You are using the custom bespoke tools in each of those environments to provide, ultimately, a quality, handcrafted service back to your consumers, right? But because you're all awesome, you do a really good job of that. Something happens when you do a really good job of that. Your customers ask for more, all right? And so you then start to have problems with scale. How do I continue to use these bespoke, customized tools to really provide the more and more services that my consumers are asking from me? And in the Industrial Revolution, this is when the concept of machines came about. The artisan realized that to address this market, they needed to scale what they do, but continue to scale in a way that still focused on quality. And so we see that in the second phase of cloud adoption, where you as the artisan in ops needs to find a way to offload some of these capabilities or functions to allow you to scale. And in this phase of the journey, we see things like security management, patch management, proactive analytics becoming increasingly important, really offloading some of the I guess, more mundane tasks to allow you to achieve that scale. You're still doing a little bit of artisan stuff to a certain extent, but you're now using tools, machines to allow you to scale that in a way that still focuses on quality. But then, and when you adopt machines, it's important to note that you can't just adopt any old machine. When you're the artisan who's famous for their high-quality, handcrafted product, you don't just go out there and buy any old machine from any old supplier. You need a supplier who cares about the quality of the machine as much as you care about the quality of the product. And there are a couple of different areas in here. I'm not going through all of these points, but certainly there are two areas that I think are absolutely critical when you're thinking about the tool sets at this stage of cloud adoption. First one is security response. And Brent mentioned it in his talk this morning, talking about Equifax. You need to be thinking about tool sets that allow you to respond to security incidents, and vendors who have first-rate security response teams in place if you are to use them to scale your journey to cloud. Because again, bear in mind we're talking about multiple hybrid cloud providers here, off-prem, on-prem, all over the place. You need to have the very best to support you in that journey. And those tools need to span multiple clouds. You do not, again, want to still be using custom bespoke tools per cloud. You need tools that provide you with patch management, security management, analytics across multiple cloud providers. Then, something else happens. You scale, and you do a really good job of scaling. And so what happens is you continue to get punished for being good at your job. You get even more markets to address, even more requests from your lines of business. And in this model of the Industrial Revolution, what happens is you start to get even more diversity in your product. So the customers are saying, we really love your product, but I want it in blue, or I want a triangle version, or I want it in lemonade instead of chocolate, right? And so we're starting to deal with that rainbow nation that I talked about before, that diversity of product mix. How do we support that in a way, and how do we continue to provide a capability that scales, but allows us to tweak settings to support diversity? In the Industrial Revolution, this is intelligent automation, or robots if you prefer. And in the third phase of cloud adoption, we see this as being the need for automation. You need to optimize the construction and deployment of that vast array of Rainbow Nation workloads. You need to do that in a way that is repeatable but also easily customizable. The other thing you've got at this stage in the cloud journey is complexity. The graph is starting to go up exponentially. You've now got all of these complex platforms. You've got, infrastructure as a service, on-premise, you've got infrastructure as a service, off-premise, you've got PaaS, you've got all sorts of things. And you need a way for that automation to be, to allow you to abstract that complexity that you're seeing in the platforms. And it also needs to be able to orchestrate and automate all the layers, right? It needs to be able to automate and orchestrate your network provisioning, your server provisioning, your application deployment. If you don't have that all the way up and down the stack, you won't be successful. Just a couple of points regarding IT automation. Two key critical factors for success that we see. First one is that for all of my operations friends in the room, we need to find a common language to do this with our friends in the developer room next door. We need to be talking the same language about automation. We cannot be talking different automation languages. We cannot collaborate in that kind of model. So we need to be using a language that is extensible across both sides of the divider. And as I said before, we need tooling that supports deployment regardless of where the deployment footprint is. So, just to remind everybody that the reason why we're doing all of these phases of the maturity model is to avoid extinction, right? So, what happens in the next phase of the Industrial Revolution? Well, we've now got the artisan. The artisan took their custom tools, created a high-grade product, couldn't scale. So they then added machines, allowing them to offload a lot of the heavy labor, still with a high-quality product, but with the ability to scale. They then needed to deal with a diverse range of requirements from customers, so they added intelligent automation. In this phase, what the artisan wants to do is provide a seamless end-to-end experience for the customer. And they want to take control of aspects of their business like supply chain, delivery, logistics, so that they can control the experience where a customer can point and click, order a piece of goods or material, and have that arrive on their doorstep within 24 hours, which was basically impossible in the world of the artisan, right? And that's the analogy in the diagram, which is, obviously the automation and autonomy of drone delivery now. And this is kind of a real critical phase of successful cloud adoption. Because what happens here is you've now got, how do we manage at scale and how do we integrate at scale? Because you're now being asked to integrate with things like billing systems, ordering systems, service ticketing systems, all of the kind of periphery of what you would normally regard as IT. But if you want to provide an end-to-end integrated journey for your customer that takes their order to delivery in a way that it amazes and excites them, then you need to do this job of integration. And that's where a cloud management platform comes in. Now, cloud management platform is a Gartner term. And I'm just going to take a slight diversion for a minute just to explain what we see as being the key functions of a cloud management platform. In your standard infrastructure as a service model, you've got the infrastructure and then an abstraction layer, which is either a virtual infrastructure manager or a cloud manager. Take your pick, it doesn't really matter. But the key piece in here is that there are a ton of other capabilities that you need to provide if you want to take control and provide that operational service quality view of hybrid cloud. Things like self-service provisioning, integration with billing through chargeback, capacity management, again, another real service quality thing that maybe the lines of business as they're engaging directly with public cloud don't care about, but somebody's got to care about that, right? And here's the trick. Not only do you have to do this for the new shiny world, right, all of these public cloud footprints, and you've also got to retrofit this onto your existing legacy environment. You cannot be in a position where you can provide this service only on the shiny new clouds. You also need to take this capability and backport it into your existing environment. Because there's almost certainly going to be an application that needs to be deployed across all of these footprints, right? So, just to recap, Industrial Revolution from bespoke tools, artisan craftsmanship, gluing it all together. We introduced machines to scale, intelligent automation to handle diversity, and ultimately we integrated the supply chain to provide an end-to-end customer experience. And the same is true in a cloud journey. Now, I've avoided talking products almost the whole way through that slide deck. I'll probably get killed for that afterwards. But let me just touch on a few products in this stack here, and there's a reason why. When we get to the machine phase of wanting to run at scale, I think everybody in this room has probably heard of Satellite. You know, it's a systems management capability for Linux. I wouldn't expect too many people in here not to know that. But Insights is Red Hat's best-kept secret. Right? Red Hat's been in the Linux business for over 20 years. And through that 20 years, we have collected a vast amount of information from customers who have logged calls with us, right? My system is broken, what can I do? So we've built up a massive data lake, which we're now using analytics on, and we can apply that data lake to your environment. So Insights gives you the ability to take aspects of your environment, share them with Red Hat, and we will tell you what's going to break in your environment and what things you need to remediate. And not only that, we will also provide you the automation to remediate it. I mean, I don't think there's, for all those people that put up their hands in operations, is there anybody who doesn't want to fix problems before they happen? See me after class. So, I think this is a super powerful capability. Everybody knows about Ansible. Ansible is the answer to all of your automation problems. If you didn't know that already, then you do now. And we've got a session this afternoon that's going to dive into a little bit more detail about the capabilities that Ansible brings. And CloudForms. CloudForms is that cloud management platform that I referred to before, the ability to abstract across multiple clouds, to provide a self-service portal to allow you to govern and report upon all of your clouds, as well as integrate with your existing legacy on-premise virtual infrastructure. So if you've got Hyper-V or legacy VMware or Red Hat virtualization, it will also integrate with that, so you've got a full visibility and ability to control and govern all of your deployments on all of those footprints, because remember, you've got all of those footprints and all of those application types now. Make sense? Yep, everybody's still awake after lunch? Okay. I'd like to finish off with a couple of customer stories. And I love this first one. So if you go to Ansible.com, they've got a bunch of videos on there. And they had what they call Ansible Fest in London a couple of months ago now. And one of the speakers they had was the British Army. Now, I think the thing I love about this is you don't really think about business transformation, digital transformation, and you really don't think about the Army, or maybe I don't. I used to work in the Ministry of Defence in the UK many years ago. And what's really fascinating about this story, not just that they took the ability from 1 week to minutes of deployment time. They had urgent patches that they needed to apply that went from 3 weeks down to a number of days, right? You can imagine in the military that that's actually a pretty important capability. What I love about this one the most is they actually have a guy from the Army who comes and presents. He's a lieutenant colonel. And he talks about his inspiration for the change and some of his heroes. And you'd think, a guy in the military, he's been in the military a long time, his heroes would be Alexander the Great or Rommel or whoever it might be. His heroes are Gene Kim, right, the guy that wrote the Phoenix Project, or Jez Humble, the guy that wrote the book on continuous deployment, right? So really fascinating talk. I encourage you to check that one out. I really love that one. The other story is Cox Automotive. These guys are a really huge auto industry player in the States. And beyond. They do car servicing, dealerships, online car sales, all sorts of stuff. And they came from a model where each individual business had their own IT stack. They had their own way of delivering. The whole thing was a mess. They unified CloudForms across all of their existing footprints and were able to provide self-service developer access in minutes. And just because I'm a geek, I love stats. They saved 10 years of developer time by doing that. I love that stat. I don't know how many pizzas and high energy drinks that is, but it's quite a lot. 10 years of developer time. That's time spent waiting for something to happen. If that's not a compelling statistic, I don't know what is. The other thing I love about that talk, and you can see that one on YouTube, it's just a short one, about 3.5 minutes. They also talk about RHEL, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, being the engine of their car. You know, CloudForms is great, and all of the other things that they use are great, but without Red Hat Enterprise Linux at the core of their business, they don't have a car, and without it, everything else is no good. That's his words, not mine. So, let me summarize, and I think I'm going pretty well for time. Operations is the absolute critical key to success for digital transformation and adoption of cloud inside customers. Operations need to change the way in which they operate and the way in which they deliver to the customers. And operations are going to face significant challenges along that journey. I would like to point out that that maturity model that I presented with different phases and different products at each phase, that's not prescriptive, right? It doesn't need to work like that. That's just what we've seen in most cases. We've actually seen them inversed the other way around on a couple of occasions as well. But really, you've got to adopt, you've got to be at the forefront of this. You've got to be adopting these tool sets, these capabilities, and applying them across both your existing infrastructure and the new infrastructure so that you can move from a model of artisan to end-to-end delivery of services integrated with other upstream and downstream environments inside your business. So what happens next? Some of these products, you don't even need to talk to me to get access to them, which is good because then you don't need to translate, right? We have trials available. So, of all those people who put their hands up as operators, I'm sure some of you have got Red Hat customer portal accounts, right? In there, you can sign up for a free trial of Insights. I think it's 60 days. Unlimited number of systems, as I recall. And that will give you predictive analytics about your environment and what things you can fix today. Same with Ansible Tower. You can go to ansible.com and get a 30-day eval of Ansible Tower, get cracking on it, get ahead of the curve before the developers are banging down your door. Come and talk to us at the booth. Some of you have already done that today. We love to get on the whiteboard at the back of the booth. I don't know if you've seen those, but they are awesome. Arrange a demo. Absolutely happy to come out and show you that these products are real. I know it's very easy for me to stand up here and talk about them, but you did see some of them today in a live demo, right? That was pretty cool. You've no idea how many hours went into creating that demo. And last, but by no means least, schedule a discovery session with us. And so what does that look like? We give you 2 or 3 of our experts in that technology area, whether it be hybrid cloud management, automation, cloud infrastructure, you name it, and we will come on site at your premises for a day and listen to you. You will tell us what you're trying to achieve, how you're trying to achieve it, what your business drivers are, what your use cases are, and we will work together with you to try and frame up how to go about that. And that is an entirely free service from Red Hat. So, thank you for your time. I've got 1 minute left in my scheduled time. Any questions? Comments? Anybody understood a single word that I just said to them? All right. Ansible, all the things, multi-cloud management. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.